Hello everybody, today I'm going to be reviewing a classic film. If you consider 2002 a classic year in film, I do because that's half my life ago. Anyway, this is one of my favorite movies of all time, and I think one of the most underrated movies I've seen, at least in the last few years. This is a Spike Lee film, 25th Hour. And as we all know, if you're a fan of Spike Lee, he is quite opinionated as a person and as a director. He's very political and he likes to make big statements and he's just bombastic. And he's one of those directors who's kind of been in both worlds throughout his career. He's, in terms of just being an independent filmmaker and also keeping himself in Hollywood as well. He doesn't always make great films, but he has made a few masterpieces, and I think that this is one of them. A lot of people consider 25th Hour to be a movie that deals with 9/11, and it does to an extent. I consider it more using 9/11 as a backdrop. It's not directly about 9/11. That's not the story. This is kind of more in the aftermath of what happened during the attacks. And you see, the absence of the Twin Towers in the opening credits. And those images kind of loom over the characters and the storyline throughout the movie, and it serves more as a metaphor. If you want to talk about the plot in the literal sense, the film is about a drug dealer played by Edward Norton, and his name is Monty, and he is caught dealing, and he is sent away to prison for 7 years, or he's sentenced to go away to prison for 7 years. And this movie takes place in the last 24 hours before he is having to go away to jail. The way that they use the storyline to be kind of the crux for the idea of 9/11 to me is just absolutely genius. I think it takes years for an artist to be able to understand something like that when you have something so historical and so significant in our world like the 9/11 attacks. I mean, it can take, years, up to over a decade. Sometimes it takes 20, 30 years for an artist to really understand and have perspective. But this movie came out in 2002. So that just, staggers the imagination. The fact that this film has such a mature understanding in terms of the way it's shot, the way the characters are written, it's amazing. Monty, a lot of his own conflicts throughout the film mirror what 9/11 meant to us. He is a guy who is very much about the American dream, the rags to riches story. He makes his money, and this is a line in the movie, it's not verbatim, but they say that he makes money from the suffering of others. He makes his money from other people's addictions. And when you think about it, a lot of Americans are kind of hypocritical. They would probably criticize Monty for what he does, but we're not really that far off in a lot of what we do. Barry Pepper is also in the movie. He plays Monty's best friend, and he's a Wall Street guy. And where he stands morally isn't that different from where Monty stands. And then you also have Philip Seymour Hoffman, another character, who is trying to be dignified because he's ashamed of his wealth. So I think all of them kind of represent different facets of Americans. I've read some reviews online, and I think that the big problem people sometimes have with this movie, if any at all, the dividing factor would be the style. Some people feel like the fact that it's really over the top. Some people feel that it detracts from the story and that it's gratuitous. And then other people feel like the style infuses the story. And I'm obviously the latter. I don't think that the style of the movie detracts at all. I think if anything, it just infuses the film with such passion and energy and art, really. It's so bright and colorful, and it's got this very hip-hoppy, very quick cutting mentality. And it's not only pleasing to look at, but it says so much about pop culture and all these different things. Because as we know, from watching other films that Spike Lee has made, Do the Right Thing being a big one, that he just has a love affair with New York City, the good and the bad. I think if the movie had stayed with this very grim, dark, murky style, that would have been fine, but I don't think it would have had near the dimension that it does. I think that all of the kind of adrenaline-infused rhythmic qualities of the movie represent our angers and our frustrations, our hopes, dreams, patriotism, all of that. And having everything edited the way it is it's not only beautiful to look at, but it's also very haunting, where, you know, it seems kind of beautiful yet sad at the same time. One really great standout sequence that I think everybody knows if they've seen the film, and the one that I often point to, is the "fuck you" sequence. The monologue that Edward Norton says in the mirror, the "fuck you" scene, is just a masterful montage. It's like the way it just builds and builds and builds. It's just constantly in your face, but there's so much going on in there, and it kind of, to me, represents what the film is trying to say in so many ways, just in that one sequence, and it's not very long. But I look at it as like a cinematic orgasm. I mean, it's just all the buildup of anger that he has. It just keeps going and going and going until finally he turns it inwards on himself. If you haven't seen this movie, you should YouTube that sequence. If there was one issue I have with the film in general, there is a red herring that I thought was slightly unnecessary. Not completely, but enough for me to mention it. I think that, well, there's this part of the movie where a key character is semi-accused of being the one that might have ratted out Monty and caused him to go to jail. And I saw it as just kind of a gratuitous plot device, and I think that the film is so strong in terms of the characters and just the ideas that are going on that I don't think it needed that. I feel like, yeah, again, that was just a way to remind people that this is a plot and they need to move it forward. So I feel like they could have done without that, but honestly, when you think about the movie as a whole, it's a very minor quip. This is not a popular movie. I honestly hadn't really heard of it until about 2009 or 2010. And I honestly can't understand why. When I first saw it, I was so blown away. And every time I watch it, it gets better and better and better. To me, it just single-handedly just grasps so much. As I said, I know it sounds like I'm repeating myself, but it's so much of what America is about. Visually and in terms of narrative ideas. It takes narrative and takes it from something that we would see as very pleasing and just gives it a dark, very dark side. And it's just, I have no words for it. Yeah, that's my review. That's how good it is. This is, as I said, one of my favorite Spike Lee films and one of my favorite movies ever. It's easily in my top 20. So if you haven't seen it, go see it. That's your homework. See this movie and let me know what you think about it. Anyway, that's my review, and thank you all for listening. You can follow me on Twitter. The link is below, and I'll see you all next time.